everyone, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Paranormal Minds. I'm your host, Shannon Ray, and even though we got off to a late start due to technical issues, we are back on track. I hope everyone had a fun-filled week. I, here in Georgia, had a very wet week. So far, it's been raining for 3 days, which is wonderful. I'm going to need a boat soon. But tonight, we're going to be talking about Tonight we're going to be talking about the Ganzfeld experiment, and it really ties into consciousness. And consciousness is a hot topic. It goes into the fringes of science that a lot of people do not like to explore. It's regulated to the fringes of science for most of the 20th century. The question of consciousness crept back into legitimacy with the collapse of behaviorism in the 1960s and 1970s. And only recently became an acceptable term for psychologists to use. With the Ganzfeld experiment and the Ganzfeld experience, you're looking into these types of consciousness. Now many neuroscientists talk enthusiastically about the nature of consciousness. There are societies and regular conferences on the topic, and some say that consciousness is the greatest challenge for the 21st century science. Although confusion abounds, there is at least some agreement that at the heart of the problem lies a question of subjectivity. For what's it like for me, so to speak, with consciousness. As a philosopher, Thomas Nagel, 1974, put it when he was asked his famous question, what is it like to be a bat? If there is something it is like for the bat, then we can say that the bat is conscious. This is what we mean by consciousness. Consciousness is a private and subjective, and this is why it is so difficult to understand. With this realm of consciousness, tonight we're going to be talking about the Ganzfeld experiment, or experience, as some would like to say. And my special wonderful guest tonight is Eric Greisinger, the owner of Penn, and he's had a good amount of success with this experiment. I tried it. I'm going to show that in just a little bit. And it didn't go as successful for me as I think it's supposed to go. We're going to go ahead and bring in Eric for right now. Hello, Eric.
Hello.
How are you doing, sir?
If I was a puppy, I'd need two tails.
Oh, that means they're wagging.
That much happiness.
Oh, is it all rainbows and unicorns?
You know it?
I love it. I absolutely love it. So tonight, Eric, we're going to talk about the Ganzfeld effect, or the Ganzfeld experiment. It has different names, but it all starts with Ganzfeld. The Ganzfeld effect, or is kind of like a sensory deprivation, is a phenomenon of perception caused by the exposure to an unstructured, uniform stimulation field. Basically, how this process works, it can test for PSI, which is kind of like your ability to read minds, or your psychokinesis. In that kind of setting, it's an experimental procedure, and in a typical Ganzfeld experiment, there's a receiver who's placed in a room relaxing in a comfortable chair with halved ping pong balls over their eyes. And I'm going to shoot up an image of that real quick. And this is just so everybody knows what in the heck we're talking about, so they won't get too confused. Have ping pong balls over their eyes, having a red light shown on them. The receiver also wears a set of headphones through which a white or pink noise static is played. The receiver is in a state of mild sensory deprivation for half an hour. During this time, a sender observes randomly chosen targets and tries to mentally send the information to the receiver. The receiver speaks out loud during this 30 minutes, describing what he or she can see. This is recorded by the experimenter, who is blind to the target, neither by recording onto tape or by taking notes, and is used to help the receiver during the judging procedures. In the judging procedure, the receiver is taken out of the Ganzfeld state and is given a set of possible targets, the same targets that the sender was looking at, from which they must decide which one most resembles the images that they witnessed while they were in the Ganzfeld state. Most commonly, there is 3 decoys along with a copy of the target itself, giving an expected overall hit rate of 25% over several dozen trials. So that's just kind of like a quick little how Ganzfeld is used for testing ESP, which is, psychokinesis, the ability to hear thoughts, so to speak. But there is also some experiments going on about how the Gansfield experiment or experience can affect or make you more aware of paranormal situations, almost bringing you into tune with frequencies with spirits and things of that nature. And Eric, you've had some experience with this, isn't that correct?
That is correct. One thing I did want to say real quick. ESP is extrasensory perception. Psychokinesis is actually the ability to move things with your mind.
My bad.
Well, and that becomes important because, like you stated, the original Gansfeld experiment was a test of ESP. Mm-hmm. And with ESP, it's a, how can I put this? It's like a telephone call. Mm-hmm. Mentally, it's a telephone call. But that's the traditional experiment. Most of the experiments that are being done now out in the field are not traditional Gansfeld experiments. They've become the Gansfeld, at least in the paranormal realm in the last several years, has gone from being an ESP test to being more of a sensory deprivation experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you watching, honestly, I've had the flu this week. I'm a little bit brain dead. So I'm going to work on that as we're talking about this, Eric. So hopefully I'll stay caught up and not go too loopy. But I'm on a bunch of medications. But the show must go on, so to speak, right?
Yes, it should. Yes, it must.
So I just want to talk about your experience with the Gansfeld experiment. Like we were saying, there's been more work done with this in the paranormal field, trying to kind of tune into frequencies with this sensory deprivation, looking into your mind more to try to use your body as almost an investigative tool to make contact. Can you talk with us about your experience with this, Eric?
Yeah, my experience with the Gansfeld has been, when I first did it, I did it at a very haunted location, a very active location. That may have been part of why. In my personal opinion, the Gansfeld will awaken things and make connections in your mind that you may not have ever used before. Mm-hmm. But if you're open to the ability to what you're shown, if you think it's going to be hallucinations and it's all created by your mind and it's all made up, then that's all it's ever going to be for you. If you understand that what you're being shown, in my opinion, if you understand that what you're being shown is actually communications from the other side, mm-hmm. which I know sounds very woo-woo-ish, mm-hmm. But considering that, at least in my experience, I was shown things that nobody else could have known, except for a few people that were already gone.
Yeah.
It will mess with your mind. You have to be prepared for it and ready to make that connection. This is like much everything else in the paranormal. There's not a lot of gray area with the Gansfeld. People either love it or hate it. You know, you either believe in it or you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And it honestly, it makes sense to me, Eric, if you think about it. With, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but going hand in hand with, sensitives and psychic mediums, to me, they're more in tuned and onto a different frequency, or have maybe have a better connection to certain parts of their brains that we don't. And with this sensory deprivation, maybe we're kind of forcing ourselves into that kind of frequency.
It's along the same lines, not the same thing, but along the same lines as the fight or flight instinct. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is when you take your sight away from you, which is what the ping pong balls, and that's something else a lot of people need to understand. You have the ping pong balls over your eyes, but your eyes are not closed. Mm-hmm. Your eyes are open during the experiment. So your field of vision is taken away from you because you are exposed to a solid color field of vision. The white noise takes away your sensory, your auditory senses, your hearing, and you would be surprised how much of that you use acoustically for where you're at in a room. So eventually, when you listen to the white noise long enough, you eventually lose track of how far you are from the wall to your left, the wall to your right, the ceiling, the floor sometimes. You kind of lose track of all that. And when you start doing that, the theory behind it is your mind will reach out. It's just trying to keep you alive. It's a survival instinct. It's just trying to get as much information as it can about the environment. And what that triggers is it'll trigger your pineal gland or your third eye. There's all kinds of vocabulary. This is where things get a little meshy in the paranormal, is vocabulary. It triggers your pineal gland, your third eye, whatever you would like to call it. But it triggers your mind's ability to reach out and gather its surroundings using things other than your normal five senses. And this goes back to the same reason, why do you have a reaction in some paranormal locations? Why does your hair stand up on end? There's no appreciable temperature drop that would have caused your body to want to create heat, by either twitching or raising your hair or whatever, because that's what your body's trying to do. So if there's no temperature change, why does your hair stand up on end?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you get just bad feelings about some places? That's all. It all ties into the same thing.
Yeah, and it all kind of goes into, in my personal opinion, it goes into your body as a tool for investigating. That your brain and your body is kind of already built to do these kind of things and to open up to these kind of things. In my personal opinion, I think that's why when people will say, hey, we have... I'm getting goosebumps, or, I've always told people that in my personal opinion, everybody has a certain level of sensitivity to these things. It's just some are more tuned in than others. In my personal opinion, that is, which might not be worth a flunky, but that's how I feel.
Well, that's it. and you, that's the thing, Jen, and you know this about me. I consider everything that happens in the paranormal to be a personal experience.
Yeah.
Whether it's EVP session, an EMF sweep, whatever video, somebody monitoring a DVR, it's still a personal experience if that person catches something.
Yeah. So
in reality, when people start saying, well, you can't count that because it's a personal experience, well, then you can't count anything. So that's just silly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, you and I know we know a few tools in the paranormal, but yes, your body is a tool in the paranormal.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of investigators forget. I've seen investigators get wrapped up, so to speak, with, we have so many different tools and, new gizmos, I should say, that are being offered to us in the field now, that so many people, I've done investigations where I've seen people like walk down the halls with, these huge vests on that are stuffed full to the brinks of equipment. And you don't need that much. A lot of times when I go into a place, right when I go in the door, I just walk in with a recorder. Because a lot of times if you just listen to your body, you can kind of figure out, you'll kind of feel where your stomach's pulling you, so to speak. For me, and that's how it happens at least, I'll just kind of be like, if my stomach starts feeling like it shouldn't be there, then I need to be there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And no, it truly doesn't. And a lot of people have either been told to or have learned to ignore that intuition.
Yeah.
That's why some people when they're exposed to this have a very profound experience. I had a very profound experience in this. It's started me to know the fact that I can trust my intuition. I know that when I have feelings about certain things, or I've been told things before and I used to think it was my imagination. Well, it's not my imagination. And you also know this about me. I've reached a point in my paranormal walk that I don't care whether people believe me or not. I know what I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've kind of gotten to that point recently myself, Eric, where it's just kind of like, you know what? You don't have to agree with me, but this is kind of like what I do, Now, with that being said, when I tried the Gonsfield experience, I had a few little things that happened, but I don't believe I was able to relax and to get that deep. When I started to feel, and for those of you watching, my camera gets a little bit blurry, but it'll kind of readjust. When I started to kind of go deep into that experience, I started to feel like I was on a boat almost, and I was sitting completely still in a chair, and it really scared me. So instantly I jolted out of that. When you said people need to do this to be prepared, and when they're doing this, they need to be prepared for this experiment. What did you mean by be prepared? How do they need to be prepared?
Well, you need to be, this experience and this experiment is not something, this is not for the tourists. If you've had a very, let's say you've had a profoundly violent past, or you've had a profoundly traumatic past, you need to be very careful doing something like this, because you may be shown things that you don't want to see or relive.
Yeah.
You need to be prepared for the consequences of what can happen, which is you could become very enlightened. You could turn on something that you don't know how to turn off, and it takes some getting used to. Yeah. I used to be extremely skeptical, and I'm not saying I've gone all the way to the other side. You've investigated with me. I'll try to explain things as best I can, but when I reach a point where I can't explain it, I don't worry about saying that I believe it's paranormal, because it 9 times out of 10 it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll go through logical explanations first, but I'm not afraid to admit that there is something on the other side, and that's something that a lot of people are not prepared to do. They're not prepared to say that they don't have total control of their situation. And that's where the problems come in. People don't want to think that they're not in total control all the time, when in reality, we really aren't.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you believe if you have the ability to meditate, if you are already tuned in, because meditation is something that's a little bit difficult for, some of us like me who are real anxiety prone, run headstrong, got to get it done, got to do a bunch of stuff and have that on my mind all the time. Does meditation and being the ability to calm your body in that way and to ground yourself, so to speak, does that aid in the Gonsfield experiment and having success with this experiment?
Well, but that's the thing is, with the Gonsfield, there's not a clear cut, you did this right, you did this wrong, because it is at times, like you said, it's an experiment, but it's also an experience. So it's not the same for everyone. Now, I will say this: I have had several sensitive / psychically gifted people that I've done this around or with, and they do have more profound experiences than somebody that doesn't claim to have any psychic abilities at all. Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, me personally, I think your psychic abilities, we're all wired the same. I think we all have the same abilities. I think it's a lot like working out. The more you use it, the better off. The more you exercise it, the more in shape it becomes. The better you used to it you are. Yada yada yada. So I do believe that if you have abilities that you've already acknowledged and trust, it's a more profound experience for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And here it goes back to, in my personal opinion, once again, these images that are coming up in the red are images of people doing the Gonsfield experiment and the experience. And it's really important to know that you can't just watch this show and go do it. I researched this procedure and I've read stories and heard from people who have done it for months before I tried it. And even I don't believe I was prepared as I should have been. So I personally believe that when, you're doing this and you're opening yourself up to, you're basically, during the Gonsfield effect, you're using your body as a tool, just to recap, to tune in to spirits and things around you. And that is a really big thing for people who, I think, Eric, people forget the basics, and like you were saying, everybody has the abilities, but it's about tapping into them. Do you think that there's any particular reason why, like, a person like me doesn't have success over, like, someone like you? Besides, you're just more charming than me?
Well, I don't know about all that, but I would say I think people, it all depends on your life situation, and by that I mean you have to be at a certain maturity level. Not that you're not mature, Shannon. You have to be at a certain maturity level, and the reason I say that is because when you reach a certain maturity level, you tend to calm down. You tend to, like you said, being anxiety driven. Got to get it done. Got to go. The older you get, the less that is into the picture. So you're a little calmer when you go into things. Another big, huge difference. I don't know which waveform you guys used when you did the experiment. The waveform that we listen to, or that I do the experiment with, has all 4 levels of brain waves mixed into it.
Oh yeah, see, I just use regular static white noise.
See, and that adds a whole different, that actually to a certain degree reprograms your body and your mind as you listen to it.
How do you think that it does that, reprograms your mind just by listening to certain brain waves?
Because when you listen to them for a long enough period of time, like the waveform that we listen to it's a 40-minute experiment when we do it. Or when I do it or perform it. And it's about 10 minutes for each brainwave form there is. But what happens in that 10 minutes is you tend to lose track of time. And after the first major change in the waveform, because it does make the white noise sound different, at that first major change, if you're relaxed and in a calm atmosphere when you started, you will actually have physiological effects. Your brain may not slow down, but your body will have reactions. Your breathing will visibly slow. If you're like me, and I guess because I got a big mouth, my soft palate will actually relax. I'll actually sound like I'm snoring, a little low rumble snore. But that's just my soft palate relaxing, which is just a physiological reaction to listening to the white noise.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And what that can also do is once you get to the I think it's delta and theta that are the deepest brainwave patterns. When you get down that low, you become, I don't want to say susceptible, but you will have much more likely to have an intense experience when you're doing that. We've also done experiments where we don't use just a red light. We use a blue light too.
Did you have success with the blue light?
In my opinion, I have a lot more success with the blue light than I do with the red. And I think it has to do with the two different ends of the light spectrum that red light and blue light are on. Blue light is closer to the ultraviolet. It's a higher frequency. The red light is a lower light. They're closer to infrared. And I think being exposed to that blue field, it puts you at a different vibration level. Because in my theory, in my opinion, everything we're dealing with is about frequency.
Yeah.
It is about getting tuned into the proper frequency for what's going on.
Yeah, and at first, Eric, I'll be completely 100% honest with you. When I first started in this field, God, I was like 16. But as time's gone by and I've used different equipments and just with my experiences that I've had, it's become rather apparent to me about frequencies and about how your brain can be tuned in to certain frequencies and about how your body is the tool, can be a tool used for investigating. I remember I was told by someone in this field that I respect very much, and they told me if your stomach starts hurting and you feel like you're about to vomit on the floor, that means you need to keep investigating and push through it because something great's about to happen. So that's why, so to speak, when I said I let my stomach lead me, it's kind of like if my stomach's hurting or I'm feeling, you got that feeling like I don't need to be here, you keep pushing through it as a paranormal investigator because that's when something great's about to happen. And with the Ganzfeld effect, you're talking about tuning in a certain way that your body is naturally open like that. Now, with that being said, Eric, do you believe spirits can just come right on in and have a conversation with you while you're in this, meditative Ganzfeld state with the sensory deprivation?
Sure.
Do you believe like you're maybe tuning into residual energy, with the stone tape theory?
Okay, well, let me throw this out there just in my humble furry opinion. I don't believe in residual energy at all. I believe, and I'll explain that. I believe that all energy that we're detecting on the other side is intelligent energy. And the example that I like to give that equates to our existence is, there have been times in my life, there's been times, and I'm sure in everybody's life, where you have gotten up in the morning at nearly the same time, you've taken a shower at nearly the same time, you brushed your teeth at the same time, you had your breakfast at the same time, you showed up at work and punched in at the same time, you left and went home at the same time. There's times when our existence becomes very repetitive and very monotonous. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that we get stuck doing that. It always changes. So I think what's been labeled as residual energy is actually an intelligent energy. It just doesn't care or is not responsive to what's going on around it.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I don't think it's residual energy. I think everything on the other side is intelligent.
You just don't think that it's aware of us.
Exactly. Just like some of us as paranormal investigators are not aware of what's going on around us in the other side.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some are, and some are not.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
so
it all goes back to those frequencies, too, in my personal opinion, about how things overlap and how you have maybe just a blip or like a brief little moment where these things come through that you can tune into and capture with your devices or your body can sense. And to me, that's all about, the frequencies and the inner. I might be getting a little bit too off the beaten path, but about how different dimensions interlie, in my personal opinion. Go ahead.
Well, the dimensions, frequencies, realities. See, this is where people get bogged down in the vocabulary. When you're in reality, you're all talking about the same thing.
Yes.
So, I mean, however you want to label it for you to best understand it, that's what I would say go with. But I believe you're correct. David Rountree, actually, who is the primary person pushing the wormhole theory, described it as if all of our realities were sheets on a clothesline and a high wind, every now and again the sheets from two different lines, they just graze ever so slightly as they're flapping in the wind. Well, that's what we're experiencing, and that's the data that we are accumulating, is those little bits and pieces where the sheets are brushing together.
Yeah. And we will go into this. I just wanted to kind of give a little sound bit. I love this topic, and it's extremely interesting. And I will actually have David Rountree on April the 2nd to be talking about these wormholes and these theories behind this kind of stuff, because I believe that this is absolutely interesting. And I love the way, I have to say, Eric, I love the way the paranormal field is going towards this and kind of going back to basics and not focusing so hard on equipment and looking at the real occurrences and why we can do this instead of the how we can capture this and let's capture more. We're starting to look more at the why, and that I like to be able to say why.
Well, see, that's the whole there's a larger and larger percentage of people that are quote unquote involved in the field now that are not worried about whether or not they're going to get a black Suburban. They're not worried about whether you like them or not, or care what they say or not. They're doing this for their own motivations, and what's happening is like you said, people are getting away from the I wonder if it's out there. They've moved past that, and they're to the how and the why.
Yeah.
And this larger and larger percentage of us that are doing this, there's going to be things discovered. There's going to be things found. And that group is also a very open-minded group. They're not closed-minded to other possibilities. And it's a very exciting thing to be part of. Now, at the same time, that also means you got the haters and the haterade drinkers that are going to be all over the place to say, you don't know what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I'm not doing this for them.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it's about the answers of why. We all know we can capture EVPs and that we have these experiences. When we investigated with you guys up in Tennessee, we had some great experiences with you guys. And we all know we have these experiences, but it's about looking deeper into the why. And I believe that the ability to do this, technology is great. And people, like David Roundtree are coming up with concepts and things that will allow us to kind of prove the why. But it's about looking into your body. And with the Gansfield effect, I think it's amazing because you're allowed to look into your body and to look into these things and try to tune into your brain and what's already there. Because like I said earlier, so many investigators are so hyped up on what I can buy to prove that there's ghosts, that they forget they're not in the right places or at the right time, so they never capture anything. You got to follow your gut, so to speak, or your senses, and open yourself up to it. And the biggest thing is you got to believe. If you're out there to prove it doesn't exist, it'll never happen to you, in my personal experience. It'll
happen, but you're going to attract something that you don't want to be part of.
Yeah.
See, that's the whole thing. If you want to find something mean and nasty, evil, you're going to find it. If that's what you think you're going to do, as much as I hate to say it, if you want to be like one of the Triumphant Trio or the Valiant Plumbers, and you want to go try to find a demon every week, guess what? If you go look hard enough, you'll find it. But that's because that's what you're going to attract. If you walk into a location wanting to tell the stories of the spirits that are there, or the energies, let me stop using the word spirits. If you want to tell the story of the energies that are there, okay, then that's what you're going to attract, and they will talk with you. If you want to go into a location just to find out what's there, but you go in there in a respectful, very polite, like I just knocked on your front door, I'm your new neighbor kind of way, then they will come and talk to you. If you walk in there saying, throw this, do this, make my flashlight do that, basically start pulling out the stupid ghost tricks, well, then you're going to attract the the pranksters and the jokesters.
Yeah.
Or they're just going to ignore you and watch you waste your time.
Yeah.
So it all, if your frequency when you go in there isn't right, and by frequency I mean if you don't go in there open-minded and you don't go in there not expecting something to happen, then that's just what you're gonna attract. If you go in there wanting good, you're gonna attract good. If you go in there expecting bad or wanting to find demons, then that's what you're gonna find.
Now, Eric, the question with the Gansfield experience, you're talking about opening yourself up to bad things. In this state, you're kind of vulnerable. Do you believe that you can be opening yourself up to something malevolent or nasty doing this experience?
I don't think you have, unless you allow them to take control of you. I don't think anything on this planet has the ability to walk up and take you over, unless you allow it. Now, what you do allow yourself to do is you do allow yourself to be exposed to that side. Okay, so I mean, you do have the possibility where you might talk with a spirit at that location. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, that's entirely possible.
And how would you recommend knowing the differences, and how would you open yourself up to these things? I guess I'm not quite clicking there.
Well, if you think you're experiencing something bad, you take the headphones off, you take the ping pong balls off your eyes, and you stop the experiment.
Yeah.
You're not paralyzed during none of this. You're not paralyzed. You know that's a misconception a lot of people have when they see it. I mean, you're laying still just to relax, but if something really bad starts to happen or you don't want to see something, you stop the experiment. You're not drugged. So, once again, unless you wanted yourself to be taken over by something or allow yourself to be taken over by something, it can never happen because you would turn off the ability for it to connect to you.
Yeah. And see, that's something that's always worried me, Eric, is when people talk about, how they open themselves up in these ways, like when you're doing the Gansfield effect and stuff like that, that they're becoming acceptable to these things. And my whole thing is how? Like, I've never really understood if you have that strong persona and that confidence and the ability to pull yourself out and not want to give into that, if that makes sense.
Right.
then you can, overcome any of that. So I guess it's just, my mentality of not really being able to understand that effectively, but it does worry me, encouraging people to get into these vulnerable positions, and they're not able to turn away from something like that.
Well, think about it this way, Shannon. If you walk into a location and before you go, because you've heard us talk about this, protect yourself. Some groups say a group prayer before they go in. Some sage themselves. Whatever your ritual is, okay, for whatever your belief system may be, what's the one thing that is accomplished by any of these rituals? The person walks away with more confidence.
Yeah, the confidence.
Because they feel protected by the ritual that they've just performed, correct?
Yes.
So what you said was very prophetic in the fact that it all boils down to your confidence. So if you go into the Ganzfeld and you're very, very quiet, you can be quiet and shy. If mentally you're just wanting something to come take you over, well, then guess what's going to happen? But if you're very confident when you go into the Ganzfeld and things walk up and they just want to tell you their story and they want to explain to you what's going on in this location or whatever, what have you, okay, then that's what's going to happen. How can I put this? I hear, much like what you said, where you've been confused about how that would happen in the past. A lot of that, I personally will put some of that responsibility back onto people. It's not anybody else's responsibility but your own to keep yourself safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So to walk into a situation and say, well, everybody else has got to protect me, I don't have to do nothing. Well, those are the people that got weeded out of the gene pool a couple 100,000 years ago.
Yeah.
You have to have that survival instinct. You have to have that love of life and that confidence in yourself.
Yeah. Now,
so if people walk in with that mentality, then that's what's going to happen. If you walk in with a positive, as much as corny as this is going to sound, but a positive white light type mentality, then you will have a good experience, or you'll have the experience you were supposed to have.
Yeah. And Eric, we have a quick question from the chat room. This kind of goes into just spirits in general. It's from Layla. She said, well, here's just one thing that has bothered me for quite some time. I had a friend that committed suicide 10 years ago or more. I really did not think about this person on any basis in the past several years. I fell asleep on my couch and my dog was in his crate by the front door and he started barking and he woke me up. I yelled at my dog to stop and sat up and saw a figure of a man that resembled my friend. The part that bothered me was that he was in motion. He looked as if he was freezing and he had his head bent down and was rolling up and down, and the only way to describe it is that he looked like he was freezing, and that really bugs me. Now, with that being said, Eric, with this experience with her, do you think that that's just kind of like how that was coming through?
Well, if she was laying on her couch, it's very possible that she was relaxed and in that precognitive type state that you get in when you're in the Ganzfeld. You also get it in when you're right before you fall asleep. That's why so many people say they have experiences right before they fall asleep, or when they just barely were waking up, they'll say that they think they saw something in their bedroom, blah blah blah. That's because you're in a state where your mind is not relying on its five senses because your eyes have been closed, whatever. So it's very possible that she may have been in tune enough to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all technically wired the same.
Yeah.
We're all put together the same. Our DNA from person to person does not vary a great deal mathematically. So we're all basically put together out of the same stuff. So I personally believe everybody has the ability. It's just whether you've exercised it or not.
Yeah, and as far as the way it came through, I know, Layla, you were saying that there's certain appearance of it is what freaked you out. Sometimes as an investigator, when these things happen to you in the field, you can't really classify, in my opinion, Eric, if you have different opinions, just let me know. But you can't classify, oh, this is bad because it kind of appeared itself to me in a disturbing manner. These things just kind of come through the way that they come through, and sometimes it's unpredictable and it comes through in different ways. ways. So with that being said, as long as it wasn't anything that was trying to hurt you, obviously it was, just something that you were meant to see, and that you were in that relaxed state, and that you were meant to tune into at that time. But the perception of what you saw doesn't, just because it's kind of eerie or disturbing, like out of one of the movies, I guess, so to speak, doesn't mean that it's something bad or negative. Would you agree with that, Eric?
And the only thing I would like to add to that is that most experiences are natural. It's not good or evil. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah.
The good and evil thing is something that we in this existence have tried to pin on it.
Yeah, and that we've tried to give label to. In my personal opinion,
right.
I don't look at things. People ask me all the time, well, have you had to deal with demons or da-da-da-da-da? That's not how I classify those things. I will classify as something that is good, something that is bad, but I will not look at it and classify it as something that is evil. But with that being said, she said she was worried that how he appeared meant that he was suffering. I don't think that appearance always has something, the appearance can give you, can tell you that. To me, for someone to be suffering, they'd have to pretty much say, I'm suffering. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. And the whole fact that she saw him, she should actually take comfort in the fact that she saw him, because that means her friend is there taking care and watching over her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I liked how she's, a lot of stories when I come in contact with clients, like you said, are about, they're almost asleep, or they're either woken up from sleep when they have these experiences. But also a lot of them have to do with their pets, Eric. Now, with that being said, she said her dog reacted to this. Do you believe that dogs and animals are a little bit more tuned in to these kind of disruptions in the frequencies than we are?
Sure. They've been around as a species a lot longer than we have.
Maybe that should
and they
tell
have no
us something.
reason, seriously, and they have no reason. How can I put this? They haven't been trained to disregard those intuitions and those feelings.
Yeah.
They don't know to ignore them or to disobey them. They're simply reacting to their surroundings, and they may be more attuned.
Yeah.
I would firmly believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eric, we're going to take a really quick break because I like to promo this amazing Paracon that is just going to happen in New York in May, Eric. It's going to be from Penn. It's offered from Penn, which is your network at the Shanley Hotel. And we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we will be right back. Don't go anywhere. everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal Minds. We just got done with our wonderful commercial about the Lower Catskills Paracon. I just want to invite everybody out to this event. It's going to be held in New York, and it's May 3rd and 4th. There's more information at www.paraencountersnetwork.com, which is the website you're on right now to watch this. Hopefully, you should be. So you need to check that out, and you guys, it's going to be really awesome. I have to give huge cadoodles to Eric, who's my guest tonight, and his lovely, amazing wife, Kim. It's really great to have a Paracon. A lot of times these Paracons are like at little conference centers at hotels, and you know, a bunch of people get together and it's really great, but this is at a haunted location. So, and your speakers are going to be like talking, some of your speakers are going to be talking to you before the investigations at night, and it's just going to be awesome. So if you're not there, you're a loser in my book. I'm kidding. I'm so kidding. But you need to be there because it's going to be an awesome experience. And if you can be there, be there. Eric and Kim have done an amazing job of putting this together, and I'm just super excited. With that being said, I'm going to bring back in Eric, who's my humble, lovely guest this evening. How are you doing, Mr. Yeti?
I'm doing just fine. How about yourself?
I'm hanging in there. I'm telling you, I thought with this flu I'd be like, ugh, but I'm doing all right now. Tamiflu.
Flu's terrible. It's been rough this year for a lot of people.
It honestly has. I mean, I went to the doctor right now. Like when I run the fever, I think that it's a little bit worse. But right now, no fever. I think I'm hanging in there. So as long as I'll sneeze and cough a little bit, but no snot's going everywhere, so we're good. So Eric, we were talking about the Ganzfeld experiment, or the experience, before we went to break, and we answered Layla's question, and I just want to recap because I know you have this warning for people, and I've heard you say it before. What is your warning? Would you recommend that anyone just come out and go, hey, let me go try this, buy a ping pong ball, hook up some white noise to my ears, get a red light, and just do it?
No.
Why?
Because it can leave you in a state where, like you mentioned earlier, that you are exposed to the point to where no matter what your confidence level, you could still be exposed to who knows what.
Yeah.
So it's just like paranormal investigating. You shouldn't ever do it alone. You should always do, especially when it comes to experiments like this, because besides the fact that there needs to be somebody sitting there documenting what's going on.
Yeah.
There needs to be somebody watching your breathing. There needs to be somebody watching what effects it's having on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree 100%. And this thing can be dangerous if you are too naive to it. I know that sounds bad, but if you're naive to the fact of what can really happen, it can be bad.
True. And if you wouldn't want to do this alone.
No.
You want to do this even if you've never done it, but you have 2 or 3 people that are there with you to do it, and they understand what's going on, and as long as you have some backup, then please feel free to try it.
Yeah.
But don't think you can just walk up and do this by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. With that being said, though, I'm going to cut into paranormal news. Eric, you want to stay with me for paranormal news?
I can.
Yeah, you can give me. I absolutely would love for you to. I'd love to get your insight. I'd be excited for it. So
okay.
Here we go into paranormal news. Now that we're back from the transition video for paranormal news that accidentally went kind of haywire there for no very odd reason. Here we are for paranormal news, And today it comes, this was from January the 18th. My son, Eric, it's really funny. He'll tell me, which is so funny, he'll be like, Mom, you didn't do paranormal news. He loves the paranormal news. So tonight I promised him that I would get to it. It comes from the Bangkok Post from January the 18th, and it says, red shirts to drive away ghost. Those of you, Bangkok, it's in Asia, so it's kind of a different culture. I like, Eric, how certain cultures look at spirits. I think that it's really interesting to see how different cultures view different spirit activity, so to speak, or the paranormal stuff.
Yeah, in my brief experience with all of that, the older the culture, the more open it is to the fact that there is paranormal.
Yeah, absolutely.
The younger the culture, the more there's less belief in it, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this article from the Bangkok Post is entitled "Red Shirts Keeping Away Widow Ghost," and it says fearful villagers in Tambon have hung red shirts in front of their homes to repel a widow ghost rumored to have taken the lives of 10 apparently healthy men in the village since last month. People in the village told a reporter that 10 strong men have mysteriously died, some in their sleep, and others just dropped dead by walking. Doctors said all of them died from respiratory failure. A spirit medium hired by the villagers said the widow ghost, also known locally as the Lai Ti, suddenly unexpected death syndrome spirit, was responsible for their demise. The medium also told villagers to hang red shirts outside their homes to repel the evil spirit, and also warned that families with only one son have a higher chance of a visit from the ghost. The reporter said that the widow ghost rumor has spread to other districts, such as Champara and Tatom. These are all places in Asia, of course, not here. The reason I hang a red shirt is not because of my political views, but it's because I am worried for my nephew's safety. I do it as a precaution, and so no one gets hurt, says a 61-year-old villager. The Red Shirt Group, more formally known as the United Front of Democracy Against Dictatorship, is a political pressure group opposed to the Yellow Shirt People Alliance and the Democracy. And those who support the military coup, many of them are strong supporters of this Asian government. Another village of 42 said some of the men who died did not show any signs of sickness. They were perfectly fine. When I heard about the rumor, I respected people's beliefs and put a red shirt on my front door as well. So basically this is happening in Asia, or Bangkok, Eric, and these people are hanging red shirts outside their door. There's also an opposition for democracy against dictatorship that, they're into red shirts, but they're saying that this is not for that, it's to keep away this ghost. What is your belief on hanging things like red shirts and stuff like that outside, Eric, to keep away ghosts, or hanging something outside your house to keep away a spirit?
What's the difference between that and a St. Christopher's medal or wearing a crucifix? What's the difference? It's about what you believe. It's about your own perspective and what you believe.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to, is that these people, it's about what they believe. And, the belief, it's kind of like I've told people before, they were like, oh, well, how would you help a person who believed da-da-da-da-da? And, it's kind of like I told them, if they're a religious person, they're going to need religious answers, if that makes sense. The answers have to come for what that person's belief system is, and that belief boosts his confidence and keeps these people safe from things like this. Now, with this being said, Eric, do you really believe a widow ghost could kill 10 men?
I believe if those 10 men wanted to be killed by something, sure.
Yeah.
I believe the other side has as much power as we give it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you believe that when people could possibly open themselves up to these kind of things without knowing it, though?
Sure. I think when people dabble around in rituals or practices that they give more power to or are fearful of, and they dabble around in that, then yeah, they can open themselves up to allowing themselves to be taken over like that.
Yeah.
Or if they've never been told to think about their situation or what they're doing. Sometimes that happens too.
Yeah. And I think this all kind of ties into like what we were talking about tonight. It's about your beliefs and, you know, the confidence and how you portray things. And if you portray them in this positive light and you portray them, you know, as your belief system, these are going to be the things that affect you and help you, so to speak. But I just always think it's interesting, Eric, when other countries, you know, you get these stories of spirits coming out of other countries, because it lets us know we're not the only ones around here, you know, that deal with these kind of things, so to speak, and deal with superstitions and what people say about these things, you know?
That's true.
So it just keeps our cultural view widened, so to speak. You there?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I'm worried because it's like flooding outside that I'm going to lose you or my internet's going to just crash.
No, you haven't yet.
I'm thankful. I'm like I'm kissing my stars.
Confident, Shannon, and be white light. Bring a white light to your computer.
I am bringing the white light to my computer. Me and my flu-infested computer over here that I got to spray with Lysol. I'm bringing in lots of confidence, all right? So this, I wanted to go ahead and mention to everyone next week, just as we're wrapping up here. Next week, we're going to have on Andrea Perron. She is the author of House of Darkness, House of Light, which is being made into a movie as well. She's a Georgia resident from the wonderful state of the South. And she's going to be on talking about her book. She's a super wonderful, nice lady, and I've just been tickled pink when I talked to her. So she's going to be talking about her book and her experiences, and why she wrote this book and how it's coming out into a movie. And then there's 2 more volumes of this book that's going to be coming out, or the series that's going to be coming out as well. So she'll be on here tonight. I do want to go back to Eric and say thank you, Master Yeti, for being on the show this evening.
Well, we actually got it taken care of, didn't we?
Yahoo! Party! I'm telling you, Yeti, the day that I don't have the day I don't have any technical problems will be like a heavenly godsend. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, you'll be fine.
But thank you so much for being on, Eric, and everybody. I hope you have a wonderful week. And like I said, next week, tune in for Andrea Perron. She's going to be in. She's an amazing guest, wrote an amazing book. If you have time, check out her book and read it. But she'll be on here next week. And everybody, try to stay safe, stay warm, don't get flooded out like me, and have a wonderful week. And I will see you back here next Tuesday, same time, same place. Have a good one, everybody.